Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone so you can stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And I can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And without further ado, I want to bring in a rhythmist that I've been looking for some time. He's partially responsible for creating the regional sounds of southeastern United States, Memphis soul. He's been a prolific drummer for so many iconic cats. Always keeping time, always playing on top of the kit, and always developing his own individual sound. Willie Hall, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, thank you, Jake. And like I said, we've been running around in circles trying to get this thing done, and it's a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, it's a high honor, my man. You know, I wanted to ask you a question. Just your own philosophy. I'm not interested in what the book says. It's just the idea of the with the downbeat, that when you are playing in a group and the group collectively loses where the one is, where the downbeat is, and then being able to come back in as a unit together. I just wanted the Willie Hall concept of the idea that any note can be the one.
Well, that's a hard one there, Jake.
No, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, man. You know, I'll give you for instance. We were filming the second Blues Brothers movie in Toronto. We were doing the scene at the fair where the car goes around in a circle, and where we're portraying these guys with the long beards. But anyway, we were rehearsed. In between takes, the group tries to perform for the audience, because it takes time for cameras set up the live albums. I forget the name of the song right now. And they counted it off, and the bass and the guitar, usually Booker T and MG, Steve Cropper and Duck Dunn, if they're playing certain songs, they'll both be playing the same line. So in this particular song, it was almost like the opening to Can't Turn You Loose, where the bass and the guitar are playing the same notes. So somebody kicked the song off. We were going to entertain the audience. Somebody kicked the song off, and I had no idea where the one was. I'm like, oh my God. And the way the line was going, nobody played on the one. I think the drums were the only thing that was on the one. It was sort of like a ba-da-da-da-da-da, one, ba-da-da-da. So everybody else played either on the one end or the two. Man, I had the hardest time trying to find the one, and it scared me. It scared me to death. And it disappointed, some of the guys on the front line. Like, well, Duck, once he had started, he wasn't going to stop. Steve Cropper was, I guess he was confident that I would eventually come in. But the reason I didn't come in for the first 8 bars is because I couldn't find the one. So it's very imperative, that the drummer knows where the one is. But if he's got a guitar player and a bass player that's real sensitive, to what the drummer is doing, then he may at some point give the drummer an indication as to where the one is. But all of James Brown's music was based on the one.
Exactly.
He said that's where the funk is.
Dude, but can you just talk about the concept of just everything's on the one? I mean, to me, that's what created the most infectious grooves. I mean, if it's not done well, then it can be a mess. Mm-hmm. It can be a mess. But if you have trust, I just want you to talk about how you learned to develop trust on the bandstand so that you could actually not just play time, but also play melodies too. I mean, and play and get your own, voice in there.
Well, mostly it comes from having a collective group of guys that are sensitive. Like I've always said, back in the old day, I guess that's why a lot of older players are admired. Like, being a studio musician, we would have clients to come in from out of town. You say you had a session, say one at 7 o'clock that morning, you'd be recording Lil Milton.
Right.
At 10:30, at 10:30 that same day, you could be recording Johnny Taylor. And then later on at night, Isaac Hayes would have the nights sold up. He would record like from 7 p.m. till 11 a.m. So now you get in the studio with these different artists, you have no idea of the songs unless in some certain cases they will have sent the music ahead of time so that everybody could study it, so that when they got in town and actually came to the studio, everybody would be on one accord. But a lot of the times the producers and the artists would come in on a flight that morning, and we, the musicians, would not have any idea what the music is. So you got to get in there. And what I admired is that you can have 6 to 8 people, grown people, that play different instruments, come together. And the whole object is to take that music that they dictate to you and make it happen. It's like taking powdered milk and making a good formula of milk. So you've got these grown people who have to come together and become one mind. And a lot of times in recording sessions, what you don't want to do is you don't want to destroy the artist's material. And so a good producer knows how to get these 8 individuals to thinking as one. And it's quite something to do that, and a lot of players were very good at it. They could come in and the artist would say or play the artist could bring his own tape of his demo of the song, and they'd play the song. And these 8 individuals were so gifted and so smart about putting tracks together that you could go in there, man, and do 4 songs in 3 hours, and the producer and the artist be satisfied. So but getting back to the one, there's only one beat, so by the time the one hits, the 2 is right behind that. So that's why everybody claps on the 2.
Right.
Now they say Caucasian people clap on the 1 and the 3.
That's right.
That's a good. Evidently, that's a good thing, because that's where the funk is, on the 1. and most people of color, they clap on the 2 and the 4. So who is really who really owns the 1? Who really invented the 1?
Oh, I love it. So, I mean, I need you to go. I mean, to me, when these cats would come in, Little Milt and Johnny Taylor, were you cutting the rhythm tracks live with them singing? Did you find that the artists were not always what I see today at 40 years old? I see a lot of younger cats on the bandstand, and they're very insecure. Where's the 1? Where's the 1? Where's the 1? James Jamerson's like, any note can be the 1. He used to get upset with people saying that. And I wonder, I mean, these shaman musicians that you cut all these amazing grooves for, were they all pretty secure with letting, I mean, obviously the band had to be tight, but were they really caught up with where the 1 was?
Well, let's omit the 1.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's forget the 1. The 1 is a natural. It's going to be there from day 1, even in the count off and the downbeat. If you're playing a 3/4 time signature, you're the 1 comes after the 3. You're going like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So the 1 is a given. But for the question about the artist coming in the studio, now, like I said, when the artists come in the studio like that, there are a couple of things that could happen. The artist can bring the whole groove with them, all the parts. The artist can actually, or the producer can actually come in and give you every part that you need to play, and then you just become a player, But then there were artists and producers that would come in and make or let the musicians create the song. There was a guy came in once at Stax, and he was from Detroit, which was unusual because everybody in Detroit should have rhythm. But this guy came in. This guy came in, man, and he didn't know his butt from a hole in the ground. And so we're all sitting in the studio, the bass player, guitar player, myself, and the keyboard player. At Stax, we usually just work with 4 pieces, sometimes 3. So we're all sitting there just wondering, what the material is going to sound like. So the guy goes over to the piano, and he plays a G, and he said, okay, this is going to be in G. So we're waiting now to either hear a tape or hear him hum it or something. And he said, he walks over to each individual musician and he says, give me this beat. He tell me, give me this beat. Boom, ba, doom, doom, boom, boom, ba, doom, doom, boom, boom, ba. And then you go over to the bass player and say, I'm going to play this. Boom, 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 boom. Not knowing any music, but he could hum everything with his mouth. Some producers were good at that. And before you know it, we're imitating what the parts that he's giving us, and it forms a complete song. And everybody's like amazed, like wow. And the cat and the producer or the artist, he had no idea of any music. He had no musical knowledge. Then you've got producers that come in with the lead sheets, everything pristine, and you've got to be on top of the beat because the guys in the East. Those drummers in the East, they play on top of the beat. The ones in L.A., they play, a little.
Wow, I've never heard it. This is so. Wait, hold on. The cats.
And then the guys in the.
Go ahead.
The guys in the South, the guys in the South, say Memphis, Alabama, Florida, we all play behind the beat. And so I was confronted quite a few times, flying around the country doing recording sessions. I'd go to New York, and the producers would say, "Hey, man, you're playing a little behind the beat. Can you get on top of the beat?" So I said, "Sure, man, I can." But my playing behind the beat, or playing laid back, as they call it, was due to playing in the South, because that's where I started my career. And L.A., they wanted a little more frisky, and there were times, man, when they would have to use machines to put drummers on top of the beat. You play the beat and they quantize it and put you on top of the beat. So it varies. Back in the day, all of this varied, but
I guess
today, man,
yeah. I mean, the thing that the drum machine coming in, the whole concept of the idea that, well, how does it happen that human beings can't keep time? I mean, it's like, I wonder about, like, did you have opportunities to play tambourine, sticks, or even clapping in the sanctified church? Because that's where the Stubblefield and Jabo, those guys, there was no trap set in those sanctified churches. But but the older cats that came over, and even their ancestors through diaspora, their clapping was not traditional. It was jagged and it was funk. It was different. And I'm just wondering about if you could talk about, did you grow up, or did you have experiences to play in a sanctified setting?
Of course, man. I'm a man of color. That's where I got my first experience from, was the church. As a matter of fact, I would go to church and my parents would have to come looking for me. Which
that's pretty cool.
Kids nowadays, they're drug in the church, by their heels.
That's right.
But there were a couple of times, man, when my parents would look around the neighborhood. Have you seen Willie? And some little old lady would say, "Yeah, he in there in the church sleep." But what I was looking for, it came through music, because I didn't know anything about the Word of God. At 12 and 13, I had no idea what the terms were. What the entire ideology was about. But what drew me in that facility was the music. And as far as being a percussionist, yeah, Well, see, the thing about working with Isaac was he cut a lot of tracks, and we recorded for a lot of. He produced a lot of artists, and so whenever we would do a track, it was a given that I would do the percussion, and so that gave me a lot of experience. I never knew how to play congas, I guess because they were too rough on my hands, so I didn't pursue that one. But most of the other percussion stuff that was done at Stax, which was very rare. I mean, Isaac's music was a little more uptown at a point, you know, with the violins and the piccolos and all that stuff. So I got a chance then to dab in some real percussions, you know, like the triangle has to come in a certain key. The bongos have got to be tuned to a certain note. So with Isaac Hayes, you could do that because his music has so many varieties. But most of the other R&B artists like Albert King, B.B. King, you know, Freddie King, all these kind of people, man, their songs didn't require much backbeat. I mean, much percussion. A lot of times we would take now what you guys use as hand claps, which are probably manufactured on a keyboard.
Right.
We would take two pieces of wood, you know, sort of. they said they were 2x4, but I don't think they were that large. But anyway, we'd take two pieces of wood and stand in front of a microphone and clap those pieces of wood together on the 2 and the 4 to simulate hand claps. Wow. To give that 2 and the 4 a little more snap. You know, we didn't have and most of the tambourines at Stax were ragged. You know, most of the equipment at Stax wasn't the uptown stuff. I tell you a little story.
Go ahead.
Isaac was cutting in Atlanta, and the band, we were all there, and we, you know, usually when he'd record, it'd be 2 weeks at a time or an entire month. So we'd all conjugate down in Atlanta. So we were there that weekend, and the Bee Gees were playing at the Atlanta Coliseum, I think. Yeah, that mean we could go, you know, we wouldn't have to sit in the studio all night. So he took us to the concert. The show was great. I think the Sweet Inspirations were doing the background. Oh, it was professional to the T.
Wow.
So after the show, we went backstage to meet the Bee Gees. You know, Isaac had evidently already, you know, he had known them for a while. So he took the band members back there to meet them. And they were discussing, you know, sound. And these guys, man, left the people that were in the dressing room to visit them. They left their fans and got in a corner with Isaac. So it was the three guys and Isaac in the corner all night. We didn't really get a chance to shake their hands or nothing, man. They loved Isaac, man. So anyway, I went on over anyway and introduced myself. So they were all then they asked Isaac about a song called Wrap It Up. And there's a keyboard, there's a clavinet part on it. I think the whole line is played on a clavinet. And one of the guys asked Isaac, said, Isaac, man, how did you get that sound, that distorted sound on Wrap It Up? And he said, man, we've got a 64-track board, and we've got everything that you can name, but we cannot get that sound, and we wanted to use that sound on a song that we were doing. And he said, man, please tell us, how did you do that? And Isaac said, hey, man, you wouldn't believe it. It was a mistake. That distortion came about as a mistake because they were doing they were playing the clavinet part. And what happened was they had been there all day, Isaac said, and they were tired. They were ready to go home. And this was like the number 25th take on the song. What happened was, as they were overdubbing the clavinet part, the microphone fell against the amp, which naturally distorted the sound. And Isaac said that everybody was so tired after going over and over the song, he said everybody decided to just leave it like it was, man. It wasn't bad, so just leave it like it was. So in essence, what they were spending millions the sound that they were spending millions to try to make was a natural mistake that came honestly at Stax Records because the equipment was flaky. You know,
I mean, this is why. I mean, this is so beautiful. I don't even. I mean, imperfection to me is the gateway to new musical vocabulary, and that is exactly a perfect example of it. All the technology in the world, but I mean, But is it fair to say there was no trap drum set in the Sanctified Church? Is that right? I mean, it was all other types of rhythm.
Well, now I don't go that far back, but I can speak for the late 50s and early 60s.
Yeah, paint that picture.
Yeah, there were trap sets, but they were those old sets, man, where everything's set on top of the bass drum.
Wow.
You had this one unusually huge bass drum, and everything set on top of it. You know, like there was a stand for one cymbal, which was not a really great cymbal, you know, not back in those days. I think during the time I came up, the Zildjian brothers had cornered the market with cymbal sounds. But everything sat on top of that one bass drum, and you may not have even had a tom-tom. You may not even had a floor tom, but whatever you had sat on top of that bass drum, and that was considered the trap.
Wow.
But yeah, there were trap sets, but it depends on what the individual call a trap set. But what I'm stating is, like I do remember in the late 50s, as I started attending church, everything sat on top of the bass drum, and that was considered a trap set. You may not have had a hi-hat. I have played them without hi-hats. I tell you a little story, man. My grandmother, she was one of the first ordained bishops in the state of Tennessee, female. And she had a church in her home. And when my family moved from Pensacola to Memphis, I lived with my grandmother, so I had to participate in church, you know, not just on Sundays, but a couple of times during the week. And so I ended up playing the drums in her church because she had a sanctified church, you know.
I love this.
We played guitar and drums in the church. So my I would play the acoustic guitar with a harmonica holder around my neck, and my my right foot playing the bass drum, and my left foot playing the hi-hat.
Are you kidding me?
And so
talk about four. Wait, hold on. You're playing acoustic, you're playing harp, and then you got two-way coordination. You got different coordination going on with your feet.
My right foot is playing a bass drum, and my left foot is playing a hi-hat. I have an acoustic guitar sitting across my lap with the harmonica holder on.
I mean, you were the band. You were the band.
Yes. So and had no training. So as you can imagine, every song was in the same key.
Of course, I mean, it was just a little bit raw. I mean, but that to me is that is unbelievable, man. What a beautiful freaking story.
I wish I had pictures of that, man, because it was quite something.
I wish you had like an analog tape of it, man. It'd be great to hear that stuff.
That would be, man. It would be exciting.
Go ahead.
And I only knew, but what I was doing was, especially with the acoustic guitar, you buy your chord book. These books that teach you how to finger, the fingering of different chords, every chord. And so I started learning, the C, the A minor, the G minor, the F minor, and all of that stuff, man. And so that's what led me into country and pop music, because I came from a small town, Pensacola, Florida, and back in the early 60s, they only had like 3 radio stations. And one station in the daytime sent its signal one way, and at nighttime the signal would go out another way, And so all we could listen to was Wayne Newton, Roy Orbison,
right,
and then there was a station out of Nashville, and the guy's name was J.R., and he came on at night, and he played the blues. He actually mixed the music up. He would play blues along with country and pop. So he was my mentor as far as choosing the type of music that I was destined to play.
Well, just for the audience,
I grew up, man, on that Wayne Newton and Roy Orbison, man. Those were my guys. And then the Beatles came along, and the Beatles they just took over. And so, I was the only black guy at my high school that wore a pair of suede Beatle boots. And all the other guys, they were envious and jealous, but they didn't like that. It was like, man, who do you think you are, the Beatles?
You're like, that's what, I had a chance to do a couple interviews with the late, great saxophonist Charlie Neville, and he was in these R&B bands and blues, they went across. I just was wondering, did you, before you got connected to Stax, were you playing Sunbeam Mitchell's and Jack's Fiesta Club in Tampa? Were you on the Chitlin circuit at all?
I didn't play anything prior to Stax.
Okay, so this is important.
I wasn't even into the music business before Stax. I was a teenager. When I came to Stax Records, I was 17 years old. I had no musical knowledge. Very little musical training. I think I played in my junior high school band and high school band, sure. My family moved to Memphis in 1965. I was 14 years old. And I lived here for over a year or so until the Barkays died. Now, when the Barkays died, that was, believe it or not, like the Bible says, when one door closes, God opens another.
Right.
Well, see, I had, because of their death, or due to their death, that opened the gateway for me to step into the music industry. I was playing around town with a little guy that was there. He worked for an insurance company. His name was Johnny London. And on the weekends, he would have all these college gigs tied up, University of Arkansas, University of Maryland, University of Mississippi. We were from the Delta, so we worked the southern area.
I love it.
In 10th grade, with at least $35 in your pocket, man. I mean, you were a big shot.
That's a lot of money back then, yeah.
Yeah. So I really wasn't working anywhere prior to the Barkays' death and me coming into Stax Records. So when the Kays and Otis died, there was an all-out audition, citywide audition, to replace those teenagers and restart the group. And they did. And the group was named the New Barkays. And we worked with every known major artist in the world. It wasn't because we were such great players, but I think it was mostly because of the sympathy that was given to the country, that was given to Stax Records and the families of the Barkays. Everybody felt so much sympathy for them until if you just call our name, everybody wanted to see that group. We worked with the Jacksons when they were the Jackson 5, Edgar and Johnny Winter, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Three Dog Night. We worked with Bread. We were on all the major tour circuits. So
I just want to be clear. Hold on. You said the New Barkays were touring with those bands you just mentioned?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we opened the show. We were part of the opening act for all of those major acts. Back in the late '60s, the big things were the festivals. The outdoor festivals that drew tens of thousands of people. Well, that was the big thing then, and so all of these groups. That was how all of us met. That was how we began to work together on the tours of the big outdoor festivals. But yeah, we had a good booking agent, and like I say, I think mostly why we were able to work with all those units, all those artists, was I think it was from the sympathy of the world for.
I think it is tragic as it was. I mean, they weren't just going to hire you. You guys were playing. Who was in the new Barcades besides yourself?
Well, see, I'm telling you the truth, Jake. I was in the group, and I knew our limitations, and I knew our weaknesses. We weren't that good of players. we were youngsters, man. That was learning how to not only play our instruments, we were learning how to perform on stage. They were teaching us about theatrics, disappearing acts. When most of the major acts had fog machines, we would steal fire extinguishers from different schools, and that would be our fog, man. You know, they cut the lights down. We had one of these cheap flicker lights. What do you call strobe lights?
Yeah.
We had one of those cheap strobe lights, man, and our two equipment men, the lights would go out in the house. We were doing like an up-tempo tune. The lights would go out. The strobe light would come on, and they would spray the CO2 from the fire extinguisher, which would and that would limit us to a certain spot on stage. Now, if you're playing on this huge stage, you know, even the guys just spraying the CO2, they're going to be seen, you know, coming on stage with them. So we didn't have anything to work with, and we had, you know, very little money, and we weren't making that much. But believe it or not, man, we opened the shows for the Temptations at the Carter Barron in D.C. We worked with both the Winter Brothers, everybody. And we toured with Michael Jackson when he was Michael Jackson. I mean, a little kid. We'd go up to the Jackson's house on Olive Street off of Sunset, and they would have these basketball tournaments and stuff. And Michael would be so devilish, man. If he caught you napping, he'd tie your shoes together. And, he'd throw
Wow.
water balloons out the window on you, and he was a crazy little kid, man. It was spoiled as shit, man. You know, sometimes you want to see if anybody's looking, and then just smack him one time. So, man, get back. Leave me
Don't
alone.
you tie my shoes? Yeah, I mean, it's like, but I want to be clear. This is like really important. I'm just going to read off some names. Charles Scoop Allen, James, Vernon Bunch, Willie. I mean, because what's confusing to me is that in your discography on All Music has you playing drums on, like, Do You See What I See? Okay, now that was that stuff that was never released before the Barcades died in the plane crash, or was that the new Barcades? Do You See What I See?
No, that's the new Barcades. Anything that came after the death was considered the new Barcades, and there were hundreds of us. There were really. So it was a revolve. But you were the major drummer, though. You were the drummer. Well, I left the group in 1970.
Wow.
To go with Isaac Hayes.
Wow.
But they would call me back to do certain recordings, or occasionally they would call me to go out on tour with them because their drummer had, you know, either a death in the family or some reason that they couldn't make the tour. So I came in and out of the group, but I left the group. I joined the group in May of 1968, and I left in December of 1970. Now, that's not to say that some of the songs that I had played on while I was in the group weren't released after I left, you know, so I was still given credit. But a lot of this, anything after 1970, I had nothing to do with, except Son of Shaft. I played on that, and there was a couple other things. But I only did 2 albums with the Barcades. That was Got a Groove. That was our first album.
Right, 69.
And then I did Black Rock, and that was.
And Do You See What I See?
Those were the only. No, I didn't. I didn't do. Do you see what I see?
All right, I'm gonna send you a link because I'll be interested.
Even though I may have been credited with it,
right,
and I may have played on a couple of songs there, but the title song, "Do You See What I See," I didn't play on that, and I know as a fact.
No,
I had
I mean,
called
this is,
James.
yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I wanted to ask you about your concept of leadership. I mean, to me, I mean, the soundtrack to Shaft, Black Moses. These are iconic albums. They were millions of pressings, and yet you were channeling this aesthetic, this soul and funk. And just as a leader, can you talk about what made Isaac Hayes, if you think he was, what made him a great leader?
Well, first of all, he was a Leo. He was the positive Leo. You know, Leos have negative and positive.
I know. My ex-wife is a Leo. Yeah, I dig.
And and not only that, Isaac was born to do what he did. It was in him all the time. And he knew how to treat his people. In his entourage, which consisted of almost 100 people at one point, they were all his high school friends and people that he grew up with. But he was never one to have to crack the whip. He didn't carry himself like that, and he didn't hire people that felt like that. Like I said, the majority of his group was friends, old school buddies. But all of us that were new to him, we, he chose us not because we were strong in one category or not because we were weak. It's just that that vibe thing you feel when you work with people. Some people you work with well, and some you don't. But Isaac was just a good person. He was naturally funny. And he would come and eat chicken livers with the band, and then he get in his limo and go meet with Sammy Davis or somebody. He was down to earth. He was a regular brother. He was a sexaholic, and he was just a kind person. And now the only thing that would tick Isaac off is that you don't pay him what you owe him. I'm mainly speaking of the promoters. He gets very angry about his money, and he loved his woman. He loved his women or his woman, and that was the only way that you could upset him.
Well, no, I mean women, he loved
one of his women, or either don't pay him his money.
I mean, like, did you? But this is the one thing I wanted to ask you about is by '73, at least by the All Music Guide, it says that on Joy, you were a composer, producer, and arranger on. Was he conscious of the idea of giving producer credits to his accompanists when they made when they helped in the songs? Oh
yeah, it was no doubt about that. He was never one to.
That to me is leadership. I mean, if you're making, I mean, I think that to me is leadership. Everybody.
And one thing I wanted to say was. Man, this guy was so talented until, talent sought talent, and talent recognizes talent. And, man, when this guy came in a room, man, he could just point to you and give you something to play, name the chords, give you the rhythm, and he could do this with 8 or 9 people and 8 or 9 parts, and they all would fit.
My God!
I mean, right off the top of his head, he wouldn't need a piano. He wouldn't need a piano to tell you what chord to play against what rhythm. So his talent demanded respect. Once you realize you're around somebody like that, it's like, wow, man! It's such a great feeling because at that point that what you're doing is important. What you're doing is a good thing. His talent is what made him. His talent and his friendship is what gained my respect.
I dig, man, because I mean, you must have been working with. I mean, so many people have talent, and then they allow their ego to supersede the music, and you're gonna, you're gonna see that, and see. My part was as a studio musician and as a road musician.
So I could see it in all kinds of genres of music. You know, you got the guys like Sammy Davis would come in, Isaac would do an album on him. We'd do an album on Billy Eckstine. You know, and so you could tell the seasoned people from the guys that were just, you know, bucking for credit. So it was evident. But like, you know, if I took Isaac a song once that went on the Joy album, my friend and I, Randy Stewart, we were producing Inez Fox from the Inez and Charlie Fox.
At Memphis, 1972. Inez and Charlie Fox.
And we had a song on there that was the last song on side B. So I took that track in there to Isaac, which I had wrote and played on that entire track. I was the floor producer. I was the music producer for that Inez album.
Wow. And
Randy Stewart produced the vocals and background vocals. But anyway, I had that track, and I took it to Isaac. He said, yeah, because he was looking for something. He was giving Stax their last album, per his agreement, and he was looking for some material to put on that final album. And I walked in the office with a track that we had taken from Inez Fox. And it was an instrumental track. And so he liked it, and he wanted to use it on his album. And he did. And we all got our proper credits, which we had to, you know, as a form of the agreement, we would have to split publishing with Isaac. But my partner, Randy Stewart, and I, we had our publishing company, and so 1/3 went to our publishing company, 1/3 went to Isaac, and another third went to a friend of ours. So, no, he was not. And then what I did was, on the Chocolate Chip album by Isaac Hayes, the first song on there is called Love and Feeling. The song was written by Tony Joe White. And how that came about was, during Isaac's stay of absence, he wasn't working that much at that time. I went out on the road with Tony Joe White, Tony Joe, Don, Duck Don, and myself. We had a trio, and those two guys, man, they are family. You know, I had so much fun with Tony and Duck. But anyway, so
wait, I'm sorry, just Tony. I missed that. Duck Dunn and who else? Tony who?
Tony Joe White.
Tony Joe White, Duck Dunn, and Willie Hall had a trio together?
Tony Joe White.
Oh, my gosh, man. That is unreal, dude.
Isn't that something, man? And we played all up and down New Mexico, Texas area, all in the West.
Wow.
You know, cowboy land. So, anyway, we had just come from some part of Texas, Tony and Duck and myself. And I was over at Tony's house, and he said, Willie, we were rehearsing for something. That's what it was. Tony and wrote this song. And he said, and then I realized it would be perfect for Isaac. He said, but I'm afraid to try to take the song to him, because Isaac's bodyguards were known as henchmen. You know, they would beat people up, in other words. So Tony Joe said he was afraid to take the song to Isaac.
Well, they would just, if they didn't know who, if they didn't know who he was.
They were just gangsters, and they had gained a they had gained a reputation for beating folks up, because a lot of that went on the road. You know, promoters run off with Isaac's money. People break in the bus and steal the musicians' equipment and stuff like that. So they just had that. There came a time when they had to beat up some people, and the word got out. You know, you know how that goes, man. People can lie on you, or it can seem worse than it was. But it was not a deliberate thing that these guys just jumped on everybody they saw. It was just that people had, you know, they carried guns, and they would use them, and they beat folks. So anyway,
some folks disappeared for life. You know, they never came back.
Well, I never heard of that happening, but I do know some broken jaws and some eyes were put out.
Oh,
and,
wow!
You know, these guys were rough. Anyway, so Tony Joe said that he was afraid to take Isaac the song. I said, well, man, look. I'm not going home when I leave here. I got to go rehearsal at Isaac's studio. And I said, drop me off at his studio, and you come on in with me, and I'll introduce you, and I'll let you hand him the song yourself. He said, man, that would be great, man. So we drove from Tony's house out in the county back into town to Isaac's studio, and the guys were waiting on me, because we rehearsed every night almost. So when I got there, I said, I want to see Isaac. Isaac came out. And I said, Isaac, Tony Joe he's got something for you. So we went in Isaac's office, and they talked, and I left out. And the next thing I know, we were recording that song that that Tony had written for Isaac. And the Chocolate Chip album went gold. So Tony received his gold album and the money. And but then there came a problem. Isaac had left the business tactics to one of his musician friends, one of his close friends. But the sharing of the points, publishers' points, that never got done. Okay, the paperwork was never done on it. So when the record came out, in other words, Isaac wanted a part of the publishing, which he should have gotten. But somebody screwed up on the paperwork, and the points were never given to Isaac, and his credit was not ever put on the liner notes. Or, in other words, if you read under the title of the song on the album, you would not see a publisher's split. So Isaac was real upset about that. He left that up to somebody else, and so it put a bad taste in his mouth. And I think once the record went gold, Isaac's people went to Tony Joe White to try to get Tony to pay them, because they didn't get the publishing. And so from that incident, Isaac and Tony kind of had some words or something, so that their relationship didn't gel anymore after that. All because of some fool.
Yeah, I mean that's a tragic story. It's just not a cool story, because Tony Joe knew that song. I mean, it was all totally innocent at the beginning, and then.
But see, Tony offered the song to Isaac. He offered whatever Isaac wanted. Tony was going to give it to him,
right.
Points, and all of that. So it was nobody's fault but the person that Isaac designated to get all the paperwork done. In other words, this guy was supposed to taking the publishing contracts to Tony and let Tony sign them and make sure that Isaac had a part of the publishing. Well, it never got done. The record ABC released the record so quick before checking, to make sure all the paperwork was good. And so you can't negotiate. You can't come to an artist later and say, hey man, give me $10,000 because we forgot to get the paperwork done on the publishing split.
Go ahead.
It wasn't like Isaac did it on purpose or he fell out with Tony Joe. That had nothing to do with it. The record company snatched the product up as soon as it was mastered, and all the paperwork that was done, the guy forgot to get split publishing on the song. That's the bottom line. So Tony, when the song went gold, Tony got his album and got his first draft of money. He came out to my house and bought me a diamond ring, and his wife bought my wife a short mink stole.
Oh.
So we had we had a lot of fun, man.
I just, you're not going to believe this, but we've already been cooking for 52 minutes.
Yeah, man, I believe it, and I got to go.
Okay, but one thing before I let you go. I want you to tell me about how you...
See, I'm here at the nursing home with my wife, and I don't want to...
No, just tell, free association, how did you connect with the dirt farmer Levon Helm?
Oh man, that's my boy, man.
I love your playing on his solo albums. That's one. I'm like.
First of all, Jake, I love Levon, man. I mean, we were just. Wow, man, I can't even explain it. But anyway, it came through working with Booker T and the MGs. When I worked with Booker and Steve and Duck, replacing Al Jackson on tour and on a couple of recordings. that opened up a lot of other doors for other groups. Like we did stuff with the Manhattan Transfer. We did stuff with
Carol
you know, a whole
Grimes,
bunch of
Sunshine, The
whole
Pinch.
whole bunch of people, man. And so Levon Helm and Duck Don, they're friends, and then a cousin. That relationship led me into a cousin of Levon, who lived here in Memphis. He was an engineer. His name is Paul. I forget what's Paul's last name. He'll kill me, man. But anyway,
he will
Paul
kill you. Yeah,
and
Paul.
Levon,
Yeah, go ahead.
Paul and Levon were cousins, and we worked at the same studio, which was a studio here called Shoe Productions, which is now called the Daily Planet. But anyway, when it was Shoe Productions, that's where we recorded the Disco Duck and a couple other hits. And so Paul was an engineer at Shoe Productions, where we were working with Rick Dees.
Yeah.
So, so through that relationship, through us working in the same building, we got to be friends, Paul and I. And then I didn't know Paul and Levon were cousins, but I found that out. So, and then when I met Levon up at the house up at Woodstock, he requested that Duck and Steve bring me up, you know, and we just hit it off, man. So I played in the band Levon Helm and the RC All Stars. And that's what it was. It consisted of all star musicians.
Were you playing? Would you play double drums, or how would that work?
No. Good question. When Levon would play the mandolin,
yeah,
I'd play the drums.
Yes.
When he'd play the drums, I'd play percussions. So at any time, you know, we had all the percussion area covered, man. And, you know, Levon played mandolin quite well. And so he would get up and sing, and I'd play the percussion, you know, tambourines, Congo drums, and different stuff like that. And when he would play mandolin, then I'd play the drums behind him. So it was a great group.
I can't believe you just hit me to this. Yeah, I mean, this Disco Duck by Rick Dees, 1978. I've never even heard this. You're telling me that was a major hit? It was a hit, dude.
Oh man, it was a monster hit. Man. Sold over. The first report that I heard, back then it sold over 8 million records. It was. I tell you what, there was a big controversy with the RSO label, Robert Stegwood organization.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want. Okay, I'll start it off. The record was done by an independent writer and record producer here, Estelle Axton, who was the sister of Jim Stewart at Stax Records. Estelle Axton and Jim Stewart are the call letters. They are the letters for the word Stax. The word Stax came from two people, you taking the letters of their name, S. So that's how the word came about. Well, anyway, Miss Estelle Axton, she was the main creator at Stax Records when they first opened, from the time they opened up until the early 70s. Anyway, Estelle opened up her own record company. It was called Free Tone Records. A minor record label here in Memphis. But she managed to be a friend of Rick Dees, and they all came up with the idea of cutting some of Rick's comedic ideas. And the first one was his idea of a dancing duck. So we all got together, all the musicians got together, and we did this thing at the studio called Shoe Productions.
Shoe Productions. But it just, you cut out, this is very...
SHOE, 2 words, Shoe Productions. Shoe was the name of the company, but now it's called Daily Planet. But go ahead.
No, I know you got to go, but you cut out there. Explain how the name Stax came to be.
There are 4 letters in the name, in the word Stax, as used in Stax Records. The ST came from the last part of Jim Stewart's name, which was S. Stewart, S-T-E-W-A-R-T. The last 2 letters in the word Stax, AX, came from the last name of his sister, Estelle Axton, A-X-T-O-N. So they took the ST from the word Stewart and the AX from the word Axton, and they combined them, and that's where the word stacks came from. Some people think it means, like, I've seen the word stacks, S-T-A-C-K-S.
Right.
But that's not the same term that the S-T-A-X means. But that's where it comes from.
Well, listen. Yeah. I mean, I want to tell you, man, you healed me so much today, man. I thank you for so much for taking the time, and I will send you a copy of this interview once I put it up on my website. I hope we get a chance to do it again sometime, and I hope your wife is at peace, and much love to you, Willie Hall. I can't thank you enough, brother.
And I want to apologize.
No more apologizing, please. No.
But I have to, Jake, man. You were so patient. Man, I know you must have gotten pissed at me, man, about the many times that we were supposed to have done this interview, man, and I didn't have adequate equipment.
No, actually, I want to be very fair with you, because you don't. You're being too critical. There was one time I had to cancel, so it's all good.
Only one. But how many times did I cancel?
Well, it was the Obama phone. It was those 250 minutes. Come on, man. So we just cooked the groove for an hour, man. And dude, bless you, brother. And
wonderful, man.
Let's stay in touch, man. All right.
Thank you so much, man, and goodbye to everybody.
Always the best. Always a pleasure, Willie. Talk to you soon.
Oh, okay, Jake. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Just another whistle stop here. A legendary drummer. Unbelievable percussionist, worked with Isaac Hayes, Little Milton, Rufus Thomas, and the old dirt farmer Levon Helm. We got more in store this week on the Jake Feinberg Show. It's good to be back in the hot seat. Until then.